Hello, my name is Dave Zapponi. I'm the ECHO CEO, otherwise known as the Educational Council of Homeowners. Thank you for participating in this Ask the Expert construction projects and inspections, including SB 326. ECHO is a 50-year-old statewide nonprofit association established to support HOA boards, board members, and engaged homeowners. Our mission is to foster a better quality of life in community associations through education, advocacy, and connections. For today's event, we have a few housekeeping items. These are now being presented on your screen. In addition, slides were sent to registered attendees. Please take a moment to review our housekeeping items. Please also use the chat icon to report any technical issues you might have and to communicate directly with other participants in the webinar. For today's event, we will be featuring 5 breakout rooms. These will include today's presenters, each of today's presenters and qualified experts. We ask that you hold all questions until the breakout session after our presentations today, where you will be able to ask those questions directly of the speaker or our breakout room sponsors. For these breakout rooms, you will be randomly placed in a room at the start of the breakout session. You will then be able to move between all the rooms. Please keep your questions general in nature. Questions about specific situations are better asked of the attorney serving your association or another appropriate industry professional familiar with your specific situation. In the breakout rooms, you'll be able to ask specific questions of the breakout room sponsor and maybe set up an opportunity to talk with them directly at a later time. Now, let me direct your attention to your monitor where you will find our disclaimer. None of what is said during this seminar shall be construed as specific legal or expert advice from the speaker, sponsors, or ECHO. If you wish specific advice, we encourage you to contact your attorney or another suitable expert directly. The information we provide during this webinar is educational in nature and should not be relied upon for specific decision-making purposes. So thank you. This event, as well as all of our events, are made possible by our generous contributions from our professional sponsors. Please join me in thanking today's premier sponsor, the Kevin Boland Insurance Agency. And today's breakout room sponsors are Access Construction or Consulting, CM Square, Birding Weil, and Bob Tetrick Construction. And I believe Kevin will be in there as well. And now a few words from our premier sponsor, the Kevin Boland Insurance Agency, Kevin Boland.
Well, hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Boland, and I'm a farmer's insurance agent based in Novato, California. I'm very happy and proud to be a sponsor of ECHO. It's a wonderful educational organization. I've learned a lot as a board member myself in the last 6 years. So when it comes to insurance with contractors, you have 6 different types of insurance coverage that come into play. Commercial general liability, completed operations, E&O insurance when you have an architect or an engineer involved, workers' compensation insurance, commercial umbrella insurance, and business auto insurance. So later on in the breakout room, I'll be happy to answer questions about any one of these individual lines of insurance. I want to share with everybody one tip right now up front, though, and that is oftentimes I see that associations and management firms will accept only a certificate of insurance to show that they have insurance by the contractor. That is not enough. And the reason for that is the person who issues the insurance certificate is only the solo broker or the insurance agent. It's not the insurance company. However, if you request an endorsement from the policy showing that the association and the management firm are listed as an additional insured, that's the document you want to have in your hands, because that means if there's any sort of a claim caused by the contractor that causes bodily injury or property damage, the association will be listed as an additional insured in that contractor's insurance policy. So that means that the insurance company will defend the association. Do you have coverage for this type of a claim under your own insurance? Probably so, but you don't want to use your association's insurance, because we know what happens when you use your insurance. What happens? Your rates go up. So always make sure you get a copy of an endorsement from the insurance broker that you're listed as an additional insured on the policy. And I'm looking forward to talking with everybody much more in the break room today. And thank you again for taking your valuable time to be here.
Well, thank you, Kevin. He always has some very good words and wise words about insurance and risk management. So thank you, Kevin. He will be available in the breakout rooms. Please support our professional members and especially our sponsors. They make our educational programming possible at little or no cost to you. And now to learn more about today's presenters and the companies represented in our 2 breakout sessions. These slides were also sent out prior to today's event. If you would like to read the bios in full, you'll find them there. Our first presenter is Steve Weil. Stephen Weil is an attorney with Birding Weil. Steve is a principal of the firm, and he was the founder, one of the founders, and serves on its executive committee. He has practiced community association law since 1984 and has helped clients address virtually all types of challenges arising out of the operation of community associations. Early in his career, his practice included construction defect claims. More recently, he has been helping boards obtain membership approval to initiate arbitration and litigation. Other areas of his practice include advising clients on compliance and with association, governing documents, board and member duties under the Davis-Sterling Act, Common Interest Development Act, and the other state and federal laws governing HOAs. He often counsels on board fiduciary duties, governing documents, free speech, architectural enforcement, discrimination, parking, and insurance issues. He also assists communities with construction needs. So Steve is an all-round veteran in the industry, so we're happy to have him here. Connor Myers, Esquire, is from Axis Consulting, an Axis company. Connor is principal, vice president, and general counsel for the Axis companies. He leads the corporate strategy, corporate development, and marketing functions. As general counsel, he advises on a wide range of legal and business affairs and addresses issues as they arise. Dan Poe is a senior construction manager with CM Squared. Dan's current duties include leading and mentoring the project team, infusing invaluable knowledge and pragmatic approaches to each project. He has helped many HOAs with water intrusion investigations, depositions, and expert testimony. Dan brings 30 years of extensive and comprehensive experience running large HOA construction, roofing, and post-litigation projects. He is a resource to help HOAs with varied and challenging aspects of construction. 2 others joining the breakout sessions are, as we mentioned earlier, the Kevin Boland Insurance Agency, with Kevin Boland from the agency being available to answer your construction project risks question. Kevin is an elite farmers insurance agent specializing in managing insurance for common interest developments. I believe Kevin has over 50 HOAs in his portfolio. Bob Tedrick from Bob Tedrick Construction will join us in the breakout rooms as well today. Bob is CEO and president of BTC and has a vast array of experience. He has been in the construction industry since 1978. BTC is a general contractor that specializes in the building envelope repair, waterproofing, large-scale exterior paint, and common area repairs, leak investigation, litigation support, and SB 326 inspections and certification. With his experience in all these leaks, it'll be good to talk to him with all this water that we're having lately, all these streams that are flying through the area, which is pouring down here in Southern California once again. I want to thank you all for being here on this Wednesday afternoon, and I look forward to today's sessions and conversations during the breakout sessions. So we'll go ahead and start. Steve, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Let's see the next screen, Connor. So I'm going to talk about managing and paying for repairs in 3 different contexts. And that has to do with day-to-day maintenance, and then a little bit about SB 326, Civil Code 5551 on balconies that Connor will talk about. And then as the Zapponis asked me to talk a little bit about construction defects and construction defect litigation. So today, again, keeping buildings safe and dry and in good condition, using experts to help get that done, and then figuring out how to pay for all of that. Connor? So generally speaking, the association is responsible to maintain, repair, and replace common area. And you notice I've got common area in quotes there. And that's because common area has a different definition depending on whether your development is a condominium or a planned development. In a condo, basically everything other than the interior airspace box of a home is a common area. In a planned development, common area is generally only what the association owns. In a condo, the association is responsible for maintaining basically everything physical. In a planned development, the association's only responsible for the stuff it owns, the streets maybe, the clubhouse, and also the stuff that the CC&R say the association is responsible for. So in some planned developments, the association might be responsible for the roofs, or in others, the front yards. Really just depends on what the CC&Rs say. So a question that comes up a lot, especially now, where it's pouring up and down the state, is whether or not the association is responsible for damage that results from common area. So you've got a plumbing break that causes damage to 3 stories, or you've got a roof leak, or leaks through windows, or at balconies. It is the association responsible. And so generally speaking, the argument is, well, if the association maintains it, it's responsible when damage results. And we would call that strict liability. I don't believe that's the law, but frankly, it's not completely clear. And to some degree, it depends on what the CC&R say. Generally, though, an association should not be held responsible for damage, even when it comes from the association, unless the association knew or should have known that there was a problem. So for example, if every year we know that leaves get all clog up the gutters, and when they do, the gutters overflow and the water backs up into a unit, well, then the board ought to have a maintenance plan every fall that makes sure the leaves come out of the gutters. So you can see from this example that there is a relationship between the duty to inspect and then liability for responsibility. There are some CC&Rs that have good language for the association and some that have really bad language for the association. So the good language is where it says the association is not responsible unless it is guilty of gross negligence, which is where the association knows of a problem but kind of ignores it. On the other hand, and that's good language from the association's point of view. Really bad language is where the CC&Rs say, and the association shall maintain the project in first-class condition. That might sound good. The developer might think that's a good marketing thing, but that is a way of increasing the association's potential responsibility legally and certainly politically when homeowners demand that a board does more. Connor, let's see the next slide. So in this area of maintenance responsibility and then making repairs, there are 3 important documents. The reserve study is a document everybody knows. It really is, we really ought to call it 2 different things. We really ought to call it a component study and a financial predicting study, right? Because the reserve study is, here are the things the association's responsible for. Here's how long they're going to last. Here's what they're going to cost when they wear out. The financial side is, okay, now we know how much money we're going to need and when. How are we going to get it? Regular assessments, special assessments, a combination like that. These are planning documents. They're planning documents, and a board can change them whenever they want, and hopefully only for good reasons and after talking to experts. And you're going to hear me say today several times, that directors are not expected to be knowledgeable as to accounting, financial projecting, how long the useful life of a roof is, how dangerous is a balcony. And so ECHO has put together a team of experts today, and they and others in the industry should be and can be lawfully relied on by boards. Another planning tool is one provided by the developer. It's called the maintenance manual. Some of them are 10 pages long. Some of them feel like they're 1,000 pages long, the size of an enormous phone book. For those of you who are of a certain age, you might remember what phone books are. And the maintenance manual is think of it like the operator's manual when you buy a new car. And in one way, it's a good thing because it gives the association a heads up on good practice techniques to minimize damage and to extend the useful life of things like siding, painting, roofing, electrical components, grading, drainage, V-ditches, and the like. But on the other hand, if you don't do those things and you ignore the maintenance manual, it increases the association's responsibility, especially if we're involved in a construction defect case. And in fact, failing to comply with the maintenance manual is one of the two big defenses that developers have in construction defect cases. I'll speak to that. The last big document in the repair arena has to do with construction and construction management contracts. And it is important to have these reviewed by counsel. This is no disrespect to anybody on the line, but generally the person that drafts the contract writes them in a way that is generally favorable to them, not outrageously, but in some ways. And so it's important for the association to have eyes wide open on what, for example, the limitations of liability might be, the insurance requirements, making sure, as we just heard, that the insurance certificates are provided and the like. Definitely, you would want for any kind of significant contract to have a qualified lawyer review them. People say to me, what's a significant contract? And they say, well, if it's under $1,000, if it's under $2,500, is that significant? And respectfully, I would say that's not the right question. The question is, if the contractor screws up, what is the possibility that there will be damage and how much will that damage be? And if the damage can be big, you should have the lawyer review the contract. The damage isn't going to be that much, then maybe maybe your manager will have a template or something that somebody has said and you think it looks okay. So Connor, let's see the next slide. So again, you can rely on qualified expert teams, but the association's duty is to inspect and investigate those components which the association is responsible to repair. This could include things like growing tree roots of front yards underneath driveways. It could include sewer line, plumbing backups, electrical shorts, electrical panels, the decking material, decks, windows, sliding doors, roofs, the whole panoply of things. Things that suggest problems. Are there extraordinary repairs? Are there unbudgeted repairs? Look at the variance in your budgets. You have vendors you're relying on all the time, the landscaping team, the roofer maybe, the reserve study expert. Ask them, require them to tell you, have they observed anything that you would want to pay special attention to, that you would want to hire an expert, an architect, an engineer, a construction manager, a contractor, to do a deeper dive and not automatically to assume, that things are properly performing as they will. This is one of the dangers, I think, that people do when they rely on the maintenance manual and the reserve study, because those two documents, as good as they are predicated on the assumption that things are built right. Neither of those documents involve, invasive testing, not even the quote visual testing that Connor is going to talk about from Axis when he talks about SB 326 balcony law. So when we're talking about leaks and other damage, that's not normal, and we're not usually normal, and so a deeper dive, some testing needs to be done. One of the things I've seen in my 35 years of doing this that directors and managers sometimes forget is members know things, and they may not always be reporting things. So if there is a concern about defects or leaks or damage or signs of leaks like efflorescence on stucco, as an example, right? Ask your members, do a survey. You want to be careful in how you phrase these. You don't want to freak anybody out. You don't want to get anybody nervous, but getting input from members can be a very valuable resource. Likewise, you want to use surveys. You want to talk about issues the boards are investigating, solicit input at meetings. Your website, you can create portals to allow people input. You can report the kinds of investigations you're doing. Point is, you want to be proactive. And I'm going to talk about this theme in a little bit, but all of this goes to earning member confidence in the board's due diligence. If you've got that confidence, you can do a lot. Without that confidence, it's going to be hard to get anything done. Connor, I want to see the next slide. Let's see that one. So again, you want to stay engaged even when you're hiring experts and when they're making repairs. You want to think about the precedent of whether you're going to make a rare repair or not. Are you making a short-term repair? Are you making a long-term repair? If you repair units in one building, what about the others? Again, those are the big issues. Generally, we don't really have time to go into it today, but all of those things are important to think about. And if you're going to be using a sophisticated construction managing firm like CM Squared, Dan Poe will be talking later, please work with them to get the proposed bids. If they're going to be putting together bids to go out to contractors for bidding, please have the lawyer review the bid package before it goes. And God bless those construction managers. They may say, no, you don't need to do that. But here's why I think it's good. Because once you put that bid in the mail and it's got the specs for the job and proposed contracts, it's really hard for the lawyer to negotiate back when the contractor has already accepted or considered a bid. So get the lawyers in early. Get them in early, I would say. Connor? All right. So most associations do not have enough money to do all of the things they need to do. And there are all kinds of reasons for that. It doesn't mean that anybody's been a bad director or that the reserve study is bad, but there are plenty of reasons why. And so when we need extra funding, we're looking at generally special assessments that require member approval, except for emergency situations involving safety issues primarily, and also getting bank loans. Our firm has done, I don't know, north of 250 bank loans for associations, raising from 300 grand to probably $15 million. And I can tell you that it requires 6 months, 9 months of planning to get all the information you need. About half of the projects that we do will require member approval for a bank loan, and about half do not, unless we're going to need to get a special assessment to repay that loan, and then there will need that member approval. But if you need membership approval, trust is essential. And when we work with clients, we talk about ways of building trust. Part of that is transparency. The timing of information is really important. One of the things boards should not do, in my opinion, is raise a problem without having a solution or a path to a solution. So membership trust, really important. And again, you're going to need the experts' help. You're going to need them both in terms of their clinical skill about understanding the way construction works, designing a new repair, but also in this industry, in our business and yours for directors, you're going to need experts who can stand up to members at a meeting, explain things in a very down-to-earth way, make sure they have thick skins, and to be partners with you in developing member trust. So, David, I think let's talk about the balcony law, because this is kind of a case in point as to, an association's maintenance obligation. So remember earlier, I talked about, the association's standard of liability, which is basically negligence. Negligence is a fancy legal concept that really means, did the board know that there were concerns and problems about common area components? And if so, what did they do about them? So it's normally knew or should have known. That is not true for balcony issues now. Now, we need these balconies, number one, to be inspected by January of 2025, January 1, and they need to be maintained in a generally safe condition and in a safe, functional, and sanitary condition. And you see, I put those in quotes because that is actually in the statute. One of the, I think, misunderstandings about the balcony law, and I know Connor is going to speak to this shortly, is we call it the balcony law, but actually it is a lot more than just balconies. And I think we're going to cover this in a little bit about what that means. But for now, we'll just call it the balcony law. Connor, let's see the next slide. So the board has a role and the experts have a role. And the board should not be second guessing the experts, that's for sure. So what the board wants is obtain proposals for those who are qualified. And I really want to emphasize that this statute says that most of this work needs to be done by architects or structural engineers. Now, construction managers have a big role to play. Contractors have a big role to play in this because they're going to be taking apart building assemblies to assist in the visual inspections. But you can't use a construction management company and have them outsource the structural work unless obviously they have structural engineers who are employed by them and who are willing to actually do the work. You want a lawyer to review the proposals on these balcony inspections in terms of the cost, the scope, what actually, the construction manager is going to be doing, the indemnity obligations if something goes wrong, who's going to be responsible, to deal with those problems, and then the unknowns. And also, we want to make sure we understand if balconies are going to be ripped apart to some degree, who is going to pay for putting them back, and who is actually going to be doing that work. You want a budget plan from your balcony inspection proposal. What is it going to cost to do the inspections, and what is it going to be, and what is it going to be costing, to do the repairs? Somebody's asked a question, if the association is not responsible for balconies, does this law still apply? Without looking at the CC&Rs, I don't know the answer. Under the civil code, unless the CC&Rs say otherwise in a condo, the association is responsible for repair and replacement of balconies, even though the owner may be responsible even just to maintain them in a very casual way. But again, this balcony law covers a lot more than balconies. So even if the balconies are not an association responsibility, walkways, stair railings, stairs, and flashing around all of those components may be covered. We definitely want the association to have a dialogue with the inspectors, the engineer, the architect, who are doing the report before, and that report is what the experts are going to provide that details the condition of the balconies. Let's talk about that, Connor. It's on the next slide. So the experts are going to identify the components that need to be inspected. And the components is not the balcony. There could be one balcony and 4 components in it. And it's the expert's job to do that and to include in the proposal how many components they're going to inspect. The things that they're going to inspect, remember I said balconies is just kind of shorthand way of saying it. But what we're really talking about are components that stick out from the buildings, like cantilevered, and that are going to be 6 feet above the ground, and that people are supposed to be able to walk on. So we're talking about, again, stairways, landings, stair stringers, roofs that overhang, all wood components as well. We want the expert to identify what the visual inspections are going to be. I say this is a misnomer. Some people think visual is, these experts are walking around and they're just eyeballing things. And sure, they're going to do that, but they're going to be looking inside framing, and they're going to be using a series of different tools to do that. Some of them are not very sophisticated. They're a little like moisture meters, and some of them are going to be a lot more sophisticated. You're going to want to anticipate, in addition to the inspection costs, what the contractor costs are going to be. for unbuttoning and buttoning up, the components that are inspected. Then these experts are going to prepare a report, and this report is going to look a little bit like a reserve study in that it's going to say what the useful life of the conditions are, whether or usually or what are they in good condition, fair, terrible condition, and that information is going to be valuable for planning for the future. We'll talk about that in a minute. One of the real wrinkles here is if the inspectors see something that is dangerous, and under the statute, they're immediately supposed to report that dangerous condition, not just to the board, but to the local building official. And then the board is required to, quote, immediately, deal with those emergency situations. Let's see the next slide. Okay, the board gets this report. We want to think about, again, sending the report to the reserve study company so that they have another source of information to modify their reserve study for the future. The board's going to think about funding. You want to compare what the reserve study says about what your future needs are going to be for stairs and stringers and landings and balconies compared to what this information based on testing in the balcony report is. You want to make sure they dovetail. You want to think about how you're going to raise that money. You're going to need a disclosure strategy because you've got to keep these reports for 2 cycles. It's like 18 years. Those reports are discoverable in lawsuits, and members are entitled to have them, and they're going to demand to have them if the board is going to be moving forward with making repairs. Remember earlier I said it's essential that the board earn the trust of the members. There's no way to do that if you're hiding the report. I got to say, I know some of my colleagues, meaning well, say that you can cloak this report in the attorney-client privilege. That might be true of the drafts if you're working with a lawyer, but when those reports are done, members have the right to them, and a board should just get right with that, not push back on it, recognize the board didn't create whatever issues are in that report, and then we're going to staff up and educate up, and then we're going to move forward with implementing or at least considering the recommendations in the report. So I know that's a lot of information I've downloaded, but I did want to take the opportunity. Connor, we got one more slide. Maybe somebody can tell me how many more minutes, I think 5 more minutes, to talk about construction defects. And this is another scenario. Let's see the next slide. So construction defects are prevalent. And people say, well, I don't have it. It's rare. It's not rare. And there are all kinds of reasons for that. But the way we know it's not rare is the legislature enacted a whole body of laws, series of laws that have to do with how defects are dealt with. That's in Civil Code Section 896, and then the following 20 statutes or so. On the street, we call that SB 800. The thing about construction defects is you can't maintain them. They're not maintainable. If there's no flashing to maintain, right? If there's balconies are inverted so that they're pushing water into the buildings, you can't maintain those. They have to be fixed. The Civil Code defines what construction defects are. These are called functionality standards, and basically they say things like water should not pass through any existing component into the framing of a building or into the building itself. Directors have a fiduciary duty to investigate these conditions and to address defects. And if they do, then they're going to be, protected by certain immunity laws. See the next slide. So you're going to need experts, lawyers included especially, and also architects and engineers, construction managers, to do inspections of exterior components. And that can fold into the balcony compliance. A lot of times we'll help a board do the balcony inspections, and then that will be part of the construction defect claim against developers, when a project is under 10 years old. You're going to want to use architects and engineering surveys. The issues about testing are going to come up. You're going to develop a conceptual magnitude of cost. All of these things are going to be done by the lawyers with the experts, keeping the board advised so that they're in the loop and asking the board to make a few major decisions. But the legwork going to be done by the lawyers. Let's see the next slide. So the SB 800 process is pretty easy. Basically, you send a fancy letter to the developer that says, here are defects that we've identified. Please join with us in exchanging information, inspecting, doing testing, and hopefully that process will lead to settlement negotiations, and either they'll be cash to the association, or the developer may come back and make repairs, as it has the right to do, or a combination of both. And so the good thing about SB 800 is it's not litigation. It stops the running of the statute of limitations for at least 180 days, which is excellent. And it creates a dialogue with the developer. Sometimes we can't resolve cases in the SB 800 process, which takes about 6 months. And then we either go to arbitration or litigation to obtain compensation, because at the end of the day, when we have defects, the question is going to be, who's going to pay? Is it going to be the homeowners, or is it going to be the builders and the developer? And the question I always say to clients is, look, if your members can afford by special assessment to fix a problem on their own, you're probably better off doing it. But if the cost is so high, 50 grand, I don't know, we're settlements now at 100, 125,000 a unit. Homeowners shouldn't have to pay that. The SB 800 and arbitration are very good tools for that. See the next, I think we got one or two more slides. So why don't cases resolve? Why don't they settle without having to go, into big court? One is you just have people who don't know what they're doing, or you've got insurance companies that are really difficult to deal with. If a developer has a low deductible and there's a very large claim, they're not going to settle the case. They're going to want you to sue them or arbitrate with them so that they can get their insurance company to come in and pay a settlement. The insurance premiums developers pay, they're enormous. They're 6-digit numbers. And so they want to rely on those to cover defect claims. So when there's a low deductible, they're just going to say, the heck with it. Your demand is too much, just sue me and I'll get my insurance company involved. A really big issue is the extent of the release. The developers and their insurance will always want a complete release of all possible claims, which means that we need to do our due diligence. I'm speaking as the lawyers and the experts, to do a reasonably thorough investigation so the board knows what goes into a settlement and what claims they would be releasing in exchange for money or repairs. The other big impediment is for associations that wait too long to bring their claims. And we say that at the outside there's a 10-year statute of limitations. That's true, but there are a lot of shorter limitations periods within that, and there are some weird laws about when the 10 years actually begins to run. Is it when there's occupancy? Is it when there's a notice of completion? Or is it when a homeowner director is first elected to the board? So there are a lot of different nuances to that. Last thing, how do we pay for construction defect litigation? Generally speaking, nowadays, the lawyers work on a commission basis, meaning they only get paid if and when there's a recovery. And certainly in our firm, we're doing that, and we're advancing all of the costs, to finance the experts, to make sure that there's a proper investigation. How do we judge what's a good settlement? If we can get enough money for a client to fix the things they need to without having to do any special assessments. So I know that was a lot. It's a little bit like speed dating. I have a lot more to say about this in the breakup room, and I know David wants to talk about a survey. Thank you for your time, and please join me later if you've got more on construction issues and claims. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Steve. That was a great presentation. We're going to do a really quick survey just to learn who's in our audience and a little bit about your property. Take you a couple minutes. Connor, can you go ahead and do that for us, please?
Yep. We'll give about 30 more seconds for this poll.
Hey, Linda, a PUD is actually a zoning term that stands for planned unit development. But under Davis Sterling, it's actually a PD, a planned development, which is pretty much everything other than a condo, with some weird exceptions that we rarely see. Community apartment projects and stop co-ops.
Just a couple more seconds here.
How come condominium wasn't on that checklist, number 4, or the last one? Why wasn't condo on that list? I put other.
Okay. So no.
I'm just going to make believe it's all condos
Yeah.
in the breakout session. No, I'm kidding.
There's the results on the screen.
So what are the results, Connor? I can't see them.
So for the first question we asked, are you an HOA board member? We had 83 or 80% say yes. We have about 21 people on here that said no. So either a homeowner or a professional. We asked if their community is older than 10 years, as what Steve was just talking about, that statute of limitations that's very commonly notified. About 93% of the participants have a community that's older than 10 years. For question 3, we asked if people, if you have been experiencing damages from recent storm weather. We're actually pretty split. It's 50-50. So about half the people on this call have experienced some type of storm damage that needs to be repaired. And then we asked what type of community are you in, which is the PUD or PD, co-op, single family resident, or other, which would probably include condos at that point. Primarily, we had 36% in the PD and 47%, which are probably the condos in the other section.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. And now we'll move on to Connor Myers from Axis Consulting. Connor, would you like to start your presentation, please?
Yeah, thank you. Just so you know, I have Kirk Wagner, who is a structural engineer with us. Kirk spearheads our SB 326 inspections. He's a licensed SE in the state of California, and I think he holds licenses in about 17 or 18 other states as well, too. I just thought that some of the stuff that we're going over might be relevant for him to also speak on, too. The first thing I would tell everybody is, if you're interested in SB 326, go and read it. It's a fairly short statute. It's fairly explanatory. There's a few things that might be confusing on it, but I would say go read the thing. It won't take you very long to do it. SB 326 arises out of the passage of SB 721, which, just think of SB 721 as applying to apartments. It applies to some other things as well, too. 721 is a little more stringent in that, although they allow a general contractor, any kind of engineer or an architect to do the inspections, they also require 15% of the elevated structures to be actually destructively tested. I can tell you, for example, our construction company did a bid on a project of about 250 units, and based on their 15% number, I think the our destructive testing number, not the inspection side, was almost $1 million just to do the tear apart and put it all back together again. So 326 came about. It's not as stringent in the sense that it allows for visual inspections, but as Steve said, visual is a little more broader than just walking around looking at things. But it's got a higher standard in the sense that it requires a architect or a actual structural engineer to do the inspections, write the reports, and to stamp them. So it's like I said, it's a little bit. It took some heat off of what you needed under 721, but it still made it a little more stringent. Obviously, both of these statutes came about due to the Berkeley balcony failure, and I think there was also a failure up in Rancho Cordova. I believe a stairwell fell and killed somebody as well, too. So, Connor, can I get the next slide? So we thought it was important to go over some of the definitions of SB 326. And so we're going to talk about those. So I'm going to read them and then we're going to talk about them. So exterior elevated elements mean the load bearing components together with their associated waterproofing systems. That means you as an inspector, we can't just simply go up and look on top of a deck and look at the waterproofing components and decide that that's all we need to look at. We actually have to look at the load bearing components themselves, which means that we have to look underneath the deck. If the deck, for example, is soffitted, where there's, I'm sure some of you have decks that have plywood underneath them, so you can't actually see the framing members. That means that we've got to get in and take a look at them. We do that by either a means of drilling a hole to be able to get up and look inside. We would then replace it usually with some kind of a strip vent or maybe an eye vent, something like that. But we do have to look at both the top and the bottom to verify and make sure that the structure is compliant with the needs of SB 326. So now let's go to the second definition, load-bearing components. That means those components that extend beyond the exterior walls of the building to deliver structural loads to the building from decks, balconies, stairways, walkways, and other railings that have a walking surface elevated more than 6 feet above ground, that are designed for human occupancy or use, and that are supported in whole or in substantial part by wood or wood-based products. That's a lot of words to basically say if you have in essence, a cantilevered situation where you have a balcony or a walkway or a stairway that is elevated and people are going to be walking on it, then you got to have that inspected. So it's, as Steve said, it's not only the balconies that need to be inspected, it's other elevated elements. We do run into an issue where how do we define what has to be inspected? And so Kirk's going to talk about that really quickly because he runs into this issue where people ask him about small areas and whether or not they need to be inspected.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to point out these definitions are directly from the statute. So as Connor mentioned, go read it. You'll see this exact definition. And to put this load-bearing components into simpler terms, it's the beams, the joists, anything that's extending outward. It can be cantilevered or it can be supported on posts. There's a big miscommunication there that this statute only applies to cantilevered balconies. That's not the case, because if you read this definition here, it's anything that delivers loads to the structure. Now, it delivers half of the loads, or approximately half, if you do have a beam and post supporting one end, but the other end still delivers loads to the building. So that all applies. Now, what Connor was talking about, the questions that come up, say if you have a rooftop deck or a balcony that is fully over a lower garage or something like that, then technically this definition does not include it, and it would not be required to be inspected because it does not extend beyond the exterior walls of the building. Now, there's some questions there, and I would 100% recommend asking for clarification from your in-house counsel or the counsel that your community has. Hopefully you have someone like that. If not, I think Steve is on here and would be more than happy to address some of these. But we do run into some gray areas where, for instance, there might be a balcony that sits almost entirely on top of a lower wall, but it extends out, it cantilevers out past that wall by 6 inches, 12 inches, 24 inches. There is some gray area there. You know, this kind of comes into what does the letter of the law say versus what's the intent of the law. Like I said, I recommend asking your counsel what they would recommend, but I kind of have my rule of thumbs here too, although I try not to make the final call because I don't interpret the law. I just carry out the instructions and the inspections. But for instance, one of those gray areas, just as an example, is if the wall or the deck extends out 8 inches and then you have a guardrail that's maybe set back 6 inches, there's not really a walking surface. There's maybe 2 inches, but no one can fall through that if it fails. So that's kind of one of my personal justifications of it. But again, talk to counsel, especially if you're confused. You don't want to spend the money to do these inspections if you don't have to. And if you try and make that call yourself, might be wrong and it might lead to issues in the future.
Can I get the next slide? Thanks. So the next definition is the associated waterproofing system, and like as Kirk says, right in the statute itself, it says includes flashings, membranes, coatings, sealants that protect the load-bearing components of exterior elevated elements from exposure to water. That's the top of the deck or the walkway that they're talking about. And part of the inspection has to be, as I said, not only the top, but the bottom as well too. And so we have to just verify that there's a proper waterproofing system in place, that there's no issues with it. Is it, are we seeing tears in the membrane? Are we seeing issues with flashing? Things such as that. And as I said, you also, as Kirk said, we also have to look at the bottom. And if there's no soffit, then we can obviously look at it, those members. If there's a soffit, we have to gain access to it. That takes us to the next definition, which is visual inspection. Means inspection through the least intrusive method necessary to inspect load-bearing components, including visual observation only, or visual observations in conjunction with, for example, the use of moisture meters, borescopes, or infrared technology. And again, oftentimes for us to get into those places, we're going to have to bring in another construction company to do some destructive testing to get us up into those structures to be able to use the moisture meters, the borescopes, and the infrared technology.
And what Steve pointed out earlier, the visual inspection, I'm glad he brought that up, because this definition, you can see it's the visual inspection of the load-bearing components. That's why we need to get inside. If people are saying they can just do a visual inspection of the outside, assuming these balconies are soffited, then they're wrong, because the balcony in Berkeley that collapsed had a soffit on it. If it had been visually inspected just from the outside, nobody would have seen what was about to happen, and no one did. So kind of the intent of this entire statute is to get inside and look at the load-bearing components. So that's why we do, unfortunately, sometimes need to do the drilling, dropping soffits, whatever it might be, so that we can look at what's going on inside.
Statistically significant sample, that's a lot of S's, means a sufficient number of units inspected to provide 95% confidence that the results from the sample are reflective of the whole, with a margin of error of no greater than plus or minus 5%. That doesn't mean we have to inspect 95% of the balconies. It could mean on a smaller project of, say, like 30 units, when we run the 95% confidence analysis, it could mean that we have to inspect all 30 of them. If you've got a 600 unit project, it might mean that that's only 200 of them. But there's a formula that we plug in, and we get our statistically significant sample to get ourselves to our 95% confidence rating. Connor, next slide. So the requirements, again, as Steve pointed out, decks, balconies, stairways, walkways, and their railings elevated 6 feet above ground level, supported by wood or wood-based products. I think we've talked about that already. All inspections have to be completed by January 1 of 2025. It's kind of an interesting issue as to how are they going to enforce that. I don't think that the local jurisdictions have the manpower to be able to make sure that everybody does these first inspections by January 1 of 2025, or that they're done by the right people. What I've heard, we have a lot of insurance contacts, and what I've heard through the insurance industry is that's how it's going to end up getting enforced to a degree. So if these aren't done and something happens, and your insurance may step in and say there's no coverage. So just be cognizant of that as you're trying to get your inspections done, and obviously talk to your broker about those issues as to whether or not there's going to be amendments or disclaimers or any kind of limiting language within your policy. After you have your first inspection, every 9 years, you got to have another inspection. As Steve said, you got to keep 2 rounds of these things, so 18 years of documents. So every 9 years, you're gonna have to call us up again, have us come out and take a look at it, and we'll go through the whole process again. If we were the ones who originally did it, and your soffited structures hopefully now have some kind of a strip vent or an eye vent, it's going to be pretty simple for us to get up there and be able to take a look, because we've already set it up for that. A licensed structural engineer or architect has to do the inspection and stamp the report. Doesn't mean that they can't have somebody help them with the preparation of the report, but they have to review it and they have to stamp the report. This is the important part. They have to do the inspection. What we're seeing is, and hearing about, are people going out there with general contractors and inspectors to do the inspection, taking photographs, and then sending them to a structural engineer or an architect, and then having that structural engineer and architect prepare the report and stamp it. The code doesn't allow that. The code is very clear. It's different than SB 721, where you can have a general contractor or any kind of engineer go out there and take a look. 326 specifically requires inspections have to be done by a structural engineer and architect. So I would recommend that, to be on the safe side, when that person comes out to do the inspection, have them produce their ID to show who they are. Take a picture of them. Go check it. There's a website through the state of California where you can go look up licenses for engineers and architects. Make sure that that person actually is the structural engineer or the architect is actually doing the inspection, because you want to make sure that those people are doing your inspections.
And even before that, ask as part of the proposal phase, as part of the bidding phase, say, who do you have doing this? You can look them up. You can say, do you subcontract it out to someone who you're just collecting costs at that point? Or, make sure you know from start to finish who's actually doing these, so that.
Hey, you guys, I'm sorry to interject, but if the association is working with a lawyer, the board can shift the risk of this to the lawyer. Make the lawyer do those verifications so that the directors don't have to.
Yes.
That's a great point, Steve. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, have your lawyer do it, and obviously your lawyer should probably be reviewing the proposals and the contracts that are signed, and have the lawyer make sure that the right people are supposed to be showing up at the to do the inspection and to prepare the reports.
And they can probably address the statistically significant sample size as well, at least in part, because, man, I really wish they had put a percentage of balconies to inspect in this. It's confusing a lot of people, but that is a statistical equation. There's a z-score. It's based on a bell curve, normal distribution. It gets kind of complicated. I wish it hadn't been written that way, but it does throw a lot of people off. So make sure that you understand that portion of it and how many of these elements the inspector is going to look at.
I will say that to figure out the statistically significant sample, it's way beyond Steve and my comprehension as lawyers. We could never figure this out. You're going to need somebody who actually understands math. So can I go to the next slide, Connor? All right, so let's talk about the inspection. It's, as we said, it's visual in nature to the greatest extent possible. Sorry about that, our line went off. Oh, there we go. As I said, it's visual in nature to the greatest extent possible. There are times where we do have to take things apart, to look at things, even more so than just being able to drill a hole to get a camera up inside to look at the various elements. As I said, drill new access points if load-bearing components are covered and there are no existing walls, no existing vents. As I said, that's with the soffitted structures. We need to be able to get up inside and look at it. We have to work with our property managers, because they need to let people know that we're going to be either on their decks or we're going to be on patios, be able to get up and look at decks. So our property managers are very important to us in working to get these things done. We can handle it ourselves, but usually the property managers are a great assistance for us in doing this. They're worth their weight in gold. If there are conditions indicating potential future damage, more inspections may be required. So if Kirk, for example, gets up there and he sees something he doesn't like, he can tell the association that I need to open up more of this in order to really figure out what's going on here. And that's allowed for him to do under the provisions of the statute.
It's not super common that happens, but it has happened to me in the past. And a lot of the times I try and work with the communities, because at that point, if I see something that I think needs further investigation, chances are there's something going on there. So I try and work with the communities to at least be in talks with a construction contractor, someone who, once we open it up, they know how to fix it too. Otherwise, you're opening, trying to temporarily seal it off or protect it, while now you have to go get bids. If it reaches that point, then something is most likely going on, and it's good to have a contractor already on board if you don't, so that repairs and everything can be addressed all in one go.
Connor, can I get the next slide? Okay, so the report. At the end of all of this, a report is generated. There's photographs of the various elements that we see. There's written descriptions of what we looked at, what we did. So we will identify, and again, this is required by the code. And we will identify load-bearing components of waterproofing. We're going to list those generated inspection locations. We're going to provide you with the current physical condition and the expected future performance and remaining useful life. Usually what that says is everything looks good until the next 9 years until you have your next required inspection report. We'll make repair recommendations, and if there are life safety issues, we're going to notify you of life safety issues, and as required, we will notify the local building jurisdiction. Can I get the next slide?
I can blow through this. I think we're out of time here, or we're very close to the end. So yeah, if there's life safety issues that are uncovered during the inspections, there's this extra phase where after the completion of our report, we need to send it to the building governing code authority, I believe is the language. And that one's interesting. Out of at least 100 at this point, maybe 150 communities that I've performed inspections at, that has happened about 5 times. Most of the time when I talk to the city who is supposed to receive this, they have no idea what they're doing with it. It's such a new law. So, I send it in, but the enforcement of this, as Steve mentioned, the code says that the community needs to take immediate action, but other than that, it's not really well defined. So it's kind of up to the cities at that point, how they're going to enforce things.
All right, can I get the next slide? So these are our frequently asked questions. We're actually out of time and we need to get to Dan. So he has plenty of time to talk to you about construction management. So in the breakout rooms, if any of these questions come up, we can answer those questions at that point in time. But we thank you for your time.
Okay, great. So thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah, we're on kind of a tight timeline here, so I appreciate you going through this. And we're going to go on now to Dan Poe with CM Squared. For all the participants here in the meeting, we will have the breakout sessions, and in those breakout sessions, you will be able to ask as many questions as you like. And I'm sure that any material that has not been covered here today during the sessions will be covered during those breakouts. So thank you so much for that. Dan, why don't you go ahead and take it away? Appreciate it.
Thank you. I promise to get you caught back up.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. All right, so now we went through your 326 inspections or any other project that you have, and now it's time to plan for a construction project. Next slide, Connor. The critical points are the pre-planning, being able to have a long-term perspective on the overall project. I know we've talked a lot about 326, so we can use that as an example. You went through your inspections, and now you do know that you have repairs that need to get done. And so you need to plan for that. Getting an architect involved, knowing that you're going to have to do some structural modifications. You're going to have to pull permits more than likely for any of the work. Need to get an architect on board, get a construction manager on board. That's going to help you communicate all of the issues through town halls or whatever other meetings that you need to have with the association, with the members. Should it have to be a special assessment or increasing the dues? Because I know a lot of associations were never funded for the inspections that had to happen, nor are they properly funded for the work that ends up having to get done once you've seen inside the cavities. So a construction manager is going to help with that portion of it, and then help the board make the right decisions to move forward and going through contractor selection. Go ahead, Sharon, Connor. Again. All right, here we go. One more time. All right, thank you. So your construction manager is going to help you with a logical approach. You're going to have your best practices. Does it need to be complete replacement of a deck? Are you doing a complete reside of a building? Are you able to do repairs? Really, what components are needing the attention, and what's a priority of repairs? An example is not too long ago, we're involved with a homeowner association that has a siding project. We went in to look at it. We saw several siding pieces that need to get changed out. The siding is located in behind belly bands, which is a trim board covering the siding. They think that you can only just go in and replace those 1 or 2 bad sheets, but we know that as soon as you start moving that trim board, that there is going to be a lot of decay in behind the trim board, and that more of that elevation, more of that siding is going to need to be replaced. So part of that is to have your construction manager, your architect, inspect those areas, determine what that scope of work is, and then prioritize what that repair needs to be. Because you're going to need to be able to fund for it. And so by prioritizing and knowing what you need to fund for and what certain order, for example, if you have trim repairs that you need to prepare for that, you're not going to just go and change out everything with also doing painting. If you have stucco repairs, you're not going to go and paint and then come back later and try to do the stucco repairs. So those are things that go hand in hand on the sequencing of the work and the prioritization of the work. Connor? Construction managers are going to have their own insurance, meaning that they are working for the association. They're not working for the contractor. They are there to work between the association and the contractor to make sure that the contractor does everything that they're contracted to do, that they're following the scope of work that was contracted, the terms and conditions of their contract, per building code, per safety obligations. They're going to need to make sure that happens. The construction manager is going to screen every contractor that we invite to bid on the projects, going through a vetting process, making sure that they have the right insurance, that they're financially proven to be able to properly do the project without having to invoice for a lot of the money up front. And looking at their insurance to make sure that they don't have exclusions that's going to interfere with their property as well. Your general counsel would also do this, which we definitely recommend. We worked on a project several years ago. I remember being July 9th. It was in Sacramento. We got brought into it after the fact. We were not the construction manager at the time. I got a call from a property manager in hysterics that the roofer came in. They had 3 different buildings that they had tore completely off in the re-roofing process. And the rain came in unexpectedly and flooded all of those units. All those units had asbestos in the popcorn ceiling. They're old enough to have also lead in the paint, and it literally flooded every one of them. They looked at the insurance policy and got the general counsel involved and found out that the contractor that did that work had what they call an open roof exclusion. And the open roof exclusion meant that if they were to get caught in the rain with the roof wide open, they had no coverage. So that was something that the roofing contractor went bankrupt. The association had to sue them, was able to get whatever they could out of them. And then also the association had to do a special assessment to be able to fund to get the project done from where they left off at it. So those are things that are critical that a construction manager is going to help you with, working with your general counsel to make sure that we get the right contractors in place to do the work. Connor? Again, all your professionals, whether architects, structural engineers, construction managers, we're all required to have our own insurance. We all have errors and omissions insurance that we're supposed to have, professional liability. And again, that's dealing with and your attorneys are going to recommend that too, that whoever you're going to work with is going to have their insurance, and that's your safest, way to transfer risk. Connor? Part of the initiation part is to do your pre-construction, which is your site inspection and preliminary findings report. That's to get an idea, get a snapshot of everything that needs to get done. We do a lot of complete building analysis inspections to where we are able to give the summary of, do you have siding issues, trim issues? Do you need to paint? Is your roofing coming due? Sometimes that works around your reserve study and knowing the different components that are due in your reserve study at particular times. Construction manager could also work with your reserve study analyst to help them maybe move out particular projects. Maybe your roofing, it shows that you're due in 5 years, but maybe you can push it out 8 in order to make room for another project that needs to happen. Your construction manager can help with that too. And meet with the board and be part of the overall construction team of pre-planning and coming up with the scope development. Connor. Preliminary findings report is kind of an example on the screen, just showing where you're going to have decay on trim pieces. You're going to note that could be safety issues, life safety issues, as well as dry rot, and then identify all those items and then make recommendations to the board on what they should do. And then knowing what, if you need to bring in architects or engineers or such to help with that as well, to come up with the final scope of work. Connor. So once you've developed the scope of work, we go into the bid package and project manual. That's used to take out for bidding purposes, inviting several contractors to bid on the work based on the project manual that's been developed. So everybody's bidding apples to apples. And then after the numbers come back in, been opened up with the board, then go through a bid analysis and then help with the contract negotiation with the contractors based on the selected scope of work. And then the contractor, contract procurement, again, going through your general counsel to get approved. And as Steve mentioned, some general counsel do prefer to see the project manuals, the bid packages, go to them for review prior to going to the contractors for bid collection. And that's definitely something that is recommended to do. Next. Sometimes, especially like on the decks, you are going to need to get architectural engineering involved. Ever since the Berkeley incident and 326s came into play, we can't get permits on decks at all without going through an architectural and structural drawings and plans on them. Even when it's small, we're not able to do it. The problem is now the building departments have been behind since COVID and they've never got caught up, and I don't know that they ever will. But that is, another issue of one of the many things that construction managers have to work with. Next. Communications, definitely a strong point, something we have to talk about. The construction manager typically is going to communicate with the individual homeowners when they're having, where they're having to get access inside their units, or even if it's a deck project where we need to have the balconies cleared off in order to work on. Construction manager is that person that's communicating with them in conjunction with the property manager at the same time. Next. As part of the other things of communications of a construction manager is walking on site, weekly walks with board members. We have several projects where we do have it set up weekly, where we have a construction committee that has been appointed by the board that we walk with. That helps, especially when there could be change order issues that we need to discuss. And so those people that are on that committee would be able to directly communicate back with the board and letting them know exactly what's going on at the same time that we will. Construction managers, we attend a lot of town hall meetings, especially when these projects are first coming out and the sticker shock is there with the amount of work that needs to get done and how that is going to get funded. Is there going to be a special assessment? We do assist with town hall meetings, helping, educate the homeowners. A lot of them, they never had any projects they ever had to deal with. A lot of them think too, moving into, an HOA that they're not going to have any projects. They don't have to worry about anything. And this is part of, helping, smooth that process out, or at least, help soften the blow. Providing general notices. General notices will typically go out months ahead of time of a project. And then there'll be weekly, notices as it's getting closer to the project, as well as hourly notices, whether it's 24-hour notice. There's always one or two homeowners that say they never saw one, but construction managers will typically post 3 to 4 notices through different phases to let everyone know what's going on with the project. Having pre-construction meetings with the contractors, making sure that everybody is going to follow the guidelines that's been set forth in the construction project manual. As production's moving, weekly production meetings on site to discuss the production that's went on. Are there any milestone issues that we're going to need to get board involvement, and just keep up on the quality control of the project through on-site management, and then providing weekly status reports to the manager and to the board or to the committee. That way they're able to talk about that in the board meetings and to be able to post notices on local bulletin boards and such, so everybody knows what's going on with the projects. Connor? Just a sample of a communication notice. There's just a general notice of work, explaining what we're going to be doing, and then they're going to have contacts so they can call the construction manager. Next. So now the construction obviously begins. You have your construction contractor pre-construction walk like we talked about previously, and then mobilizing to the project, getting that moving. It's the hardest part to start a job and finish a job. And that's where it's critical that everything is pre-planned out ahead of time, and knowing, where the staging area is going to be, where the porta potty is going to be. And, and through the years lately, we've had COVID hand washing stations that we need to make sure that those are set up correctly. The other part of the construction manager is going to do is change order management. If the contractor runs into hidden damages within the project, it's something that could not be foreseen. You open up a roof, for example, and then there's dry rot. The construction manager needs to verify it and then verify what that change order proposal cost is going to be. There should be in their contract, in the contractor's contract, something for unit cost. And so then we need to make sure that that's in compliance with the unit rates that they provided, that they're under contract to be able to bill out for, and then keeping up with the quality control and safety. Connor? Other things that come into play, construction manager is not necessarily going to regulate what the OSHA requirements are, or try to enforce them. They are going to make recommendations. If they have ladders that are not tied off, those need to get tied off. Basic items that we see as a construction manager, knowing in the construction industry, things that are not safe. We're not going to let the contractor continue doing that. They need to stop that. If there's boards that they've put up to walk from building to building and there's no handrails on it, those are things that we see that's going to get somebody hurt or killed, that as a construction manager, we need to stop them and then get them to correct those issues. Again, progress and management, quality control. The construction manager is also going to review any of the progress billings that come in from the contractor and verify the percent complete that they're billing for. If they're saying that they're 30% complete, then that's what that progress billing should have on it, is 30% complete. If they're billing for more than that, then that billing needs to get rejected and goes back to the contractor for correction. And then after it's all said and done, perform the project closeout at the end, which would be we used to do binders, and that's how old I am, but now we do everything with electronic files that we send to the manager and to the boards to be able to keep that documentation in place, which would have copies of all contracts, copies of their insurance certificates, any warranties that's related to the project, whether it's a maintenance manual for deck coating or anything else that they need to maintain, that if they did not maintain it, then it would end up being something that would jeopardize the warranty. Then those are all the items that have to have, or has to be included within the project closeout. Next. Delays, mistakes, and challenges. Go ahead and go next. So lack of communication is definitely a problem that happens. Undefined, unclear scope of work, which will lead to change orders. Weather delays permit delays, which that didn't used to be an issue, but now it's a huge issue. We have one project that we've had in permit process for 6 months, so we're still waiting on the permit. And they just now recently came back to us of what their changes are, the corrections they want. Those are things that a construction manager has to work on and to help facilitate, move it back and move the project forward, working with the contractor and with the board and with your manager. Thanks. Funding challenges, as Steve mentioned earlier in his presentation, that is a challenge. Knowing that, for example, in that one siding project, they let things go to the point where now it's created, interior damages and structural damages because they didn't have the money. And now they're still trying to figure out how they're going to be able to do it because they don't want to special assess, but there's really no other way to do it. Poor contractor workmanship. Contractor is not financially stable. And then changes in labor and material cost. Through COVID, that was a huge jump. And even looking at material costs from 2019 till today, there's been an increase of 60% in material cost. And just navigating through the local state laws. I think that might be it.
Good to go. Thank you very much. We appreciate that, Dan. So we're going to go ahead and do the outro here really quickly. Let me get this caught up here. Yeah, so I hope the breakout sessions were interesting and informative. Remember, the breakout sessions are private and are semi-private. So you can share your information and talk. If you have a project, please, we encourage you to talk to your various breakout room sponsors. So we'll go ahead and kick into our conclusion, and then we'll open up the breakout rooms again so we'll be able to, for those that are staying, be able to ask even more detailed questions if you have a project that you're looking at doing. So welcome back to the general session. We will be heading back to the breakout room just after this, as I mentioned. I want to thank you for attending today, and if you're an ECHO member, a special thank you to you. For those who are joining us today who are not members, you are invited to become a member. You or your community can join by going to echo-ca.org and clicking the membership tab. For our members, please invite your friends, board members, and especially management firms to participate and become members of ECHO. Please ask them. It's a simple invitation is usually all it takes. This year, ECHO is celebrating its 50th anniversary, and we have a special event on May 5th, and we hope that you'll all participate and be part of that. You can get a link to sign up after this event. So thank you for that. I hope that we'll see you there. We're going to be meeting in San Mateo at Pinstripes from 4 to 7:30 p.m. and we'll play some games and have some fun and share a lot of good times. We're also going to be giving out the ECHO Awards. We have 4 awards that we'll be giving out at that event. If you have time and you'd like to become involved with ECHO a little more, we also have a slide here that has several opportunities for you to participate. Please feel free to drop me an email or Connor, and we'll discuss any of these opportunities with you. We are looking to fill a part-time position, an administrative event coordinator position. And if you're interested in that or know someone who wants a 20-hour-a-week job and willing to help us with publications and events, please have them contact me at dzapponi@echo-ca.org. And then we have in San Diego, tomorrow we have our first San Diego Resource Panel meeting starting at 11:30. It's going to go to 1 p.m. at the Mission Hills Hillcrest Knox Branch Library. I think I got that all right, but it's the Hillcrest Library. There will be there's free parking below. So if you're from the greater San Diego area, we encourage you to participate. This is in person. There's a free lunch, and we're going to be talking about insurance issues, including denials and cybersecurity. So we hope to see you there. Also, we invite HOA board members and former board members to join the ECHO Board Members Club. We're going to meet, we meet every Tuesday from 5:30 to 7. This is a unique opportunity to work peer-to-peer and learn from everyone peer-to-peer. I want to thank you. Oops, somebody's got their music on. Thank you to all of our faculty members today for helping us with the program. And of course, to all of you for attending today and making this event a success. ECHO appreciates your investment in education to foster a better quality of life in HOA communities. And I want to say thank you to Connor. He has a few short announcements that he'd like to go over with you. And then what we're going to do is break back to the breakout sessions. And as long as we have a good, consistent and flowing argument or conversation in those breakouts, we'll keep the rooms open. So we plan 5 minutes. We can go until I guess it's till 3:30 if we need to. So thank you so much. I'm going to sign off here. Thank you. And we're going to have Connor say a few words, and then we'll break back into the breakout rooms. Thank you.